Welcome to Good Burger Reviews. My name is John, and I'm here to review a brand new 2026 movie, and that is Deep Water.
Brace, full impact.
What do we do?
We find survivors.
This movie was released in May of 2026. It is directed by Renny Harlin. It stars Aaron Eckhart, Ben Kingsley, and Angus Sampson. Basic summary. A group of international passengers en route from Los Angeles to Shanghai are forced to make an emergency landing in shark-infested waters. Now they must work together in hopes to overcome the frenzy of sharks drawn to the wreckage. So when anticipating this one, I was highly mixed about what we were going to get with Deep Water. And that's because this movie seems to have a backstory without really having a backstory, but maybe it's more about the director and who's behind this movie. And that is Renny Harlin. And when I think of Renny Harlin as of recent, he's been a huge disappointment in the Strangers trilogy. And he's been the top of the worst list for the last 2 years. And unfortunately, I wasn't sure if enough time had passed since the Strangers trilogy, since the Strangers Chapter 3 was only 3 months back, that I was ready for another movie by him. However, Renny Harlin and I have a past. And that is a good past. And that past consists of movies like Deep Blue Sea, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Die Hard 2. He's had a few other action titles that I've been a fan of. And his movies from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s have overall been pretty impressive. But you blend that with the idea of what we've been getting with shark movies recently, and I wasn't sure what to expect. The other mix in this has been Aaron Eckhart and Ben Kingsley were starring in this. And I thought, well, with names like that, and it seemed to be a big budget film, my hopes started to peak up again. Also, I have to consider this. This movie is a blend of multiple movies. Now, I'm going to break it down into two categories of the blends. The non-shark movies that it blends with, and then the shark movies that seem to be echoed in this movie as well. So in the non-shark movie blend, we have movies like Final Destination, Titanic, Poseidon Adventure, many action, Airport. I think of movies that have big casts and big catastrophes and also can be campy as well. Now, shark movies, I think primarily there's a blend of No Way Up right out the gate, since there was a plane crash shark movie that was out over the last 2 years. But I also think of movies like Jaws 2. Out of all the Jawses, Jaws 2 seems to have the most flavor in this one. And then there's all, typical shark movies as of recent, like Thrash and Dangerous Animals. So, with no further ado, let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly on Deep Water. So the first thing I put in the positive, since this isn't just a shark movie, it's also a plane crash movie.
Is there a problem, sir? What's your fucking problem?
Alex, qu'est-ce que c'est?
Because this fucking plane's gonna explode! Shut up, Brownie.
You're so not funny.
This is your idea of a joke.
It's not a joke! It's not a joke!
Alex, take it easy. It's not a joke. Sit down, Brownie.
It's going down!
We will remove you from this aircraft and I'll admit you.
Fuck you, I'll remove myself!
Get up!
Everybody in the aisle, up the plane.
You're not Everybody just stay where you are. Just sit tight.
Fucking plane. Go check him out, see how he's doing. Okay.
And as of recent, There's been plane crashes as movies, and I feel like they kind of skimper out on the plane crash. Like I'd said in my review of Send Help, I felt like the plane crash was decent enough, but it was quite quick and quite small scale. The plane crash here gave me more of a Final Destination vibe. And there were parts of the crash that literally felt like it was ripped right out of Final Destination. And I'll probably elaborate on that more in spoilers. But the whole front end of the movie not only gives you all the characters that are going to be on this plane and then in the water dealing with the sharks, but it also draws out the actual plane crash into almost the whole front end of the movie. In fact, it's a solid hour before we see a shark. And I don't think that's a terrible negative there. I'm going to keep that in the positives, because the plane crash was pretty brutal and long. And the other part that I want to add that made me feel really positive about it was blending it with the music that was going on and what they were filming. It was highly emotional and terrifying. Overall, the visuals were pretty decent. Like when I say, the plane, the water, kind of what you're seeing, the colors, the blends, the characters, the carnage, just the overall visuals. I felt like they were pretty impressive, and I felt like the CGI did not sneak in too much in a way that took me away. Another thing I'll put in the positives for this one is the character group as a whole. I felt like there is a lot, but I felt like the ones that they tend to focus on, for the majority of the ones, they were likable. Now, there was a few that were supposed to be unlikable, and they were definitely unlikable, and we'll get into who they are as well.
Sir, you can't do that!
You worried about this?
And the last thing that I'll put in the positive is the fact that Aaron Eckhart and Ben Kingsley are in this movie as the pilots. They are, the head pilot is Ben Kingsley, and the first mate or the first man or whatever his title is Aaron Eckhart. And I felt like their acting, their characters really elevated this movie above what it would have seen. It kind of took it out of that very generic shark category and put it into next level.
You wanted to take a swing at me over that flap check. Isn't that how you got bounced out of the Air Force?
That senior officer had it coming. You're annoying.
And that'll bring me to what I'm mixed on in this movie. And I guess my first and biggest mix is the sharks. So I didn't hate the sharks. I'm mixed on them. I mean, like I said, there was a delay till we saw them, and I don't think I hated that part because it was appropriate for the story that they told. However, these sharks operated in a hyperactive way without any rhyme or reason, and there really wasn't probably no research done on this movie about how sharks behave.
Was that a goddamn shark broke through that door?
I expect so.
You expect so? Huh. Well. Am I the only asshole down here who thinks that a tad bit odd? It can do that? Bust through a steel door?
I ain't the expert, but I'd say given Gen 2's size and some room to move, she could put a couple tons, maybe more, into a hit. So yeah, in my opinion, she wants through, she's coming.
And these sharks, they aren't just breaking down doors for the sheer joy of it, are they? They're after us.
Pretty damn obvious. We don't know what they're doing yet.
Just what the hell did you do to those sharks?
I guess Renny Harlin likes Mako sharks because those were the sharks that were in Deep Blue Sea, and it seemed like the shark that we saw the most of in this was a Mako shark. Though they never really elaborated on what type of sharks they were. They were fast, they were quick, and they were very unpredictable as far as behavior for sharks.
Clara, come on.
Where's my little brother?
Okay, it's gonna be all right.
Another thing that mixes me about this one is there's a lot of suspension of disbelief in the Like I just said this about the sharks being realistic, I felt like the entire plane crash, even though the emotional beats felt realistic and the terror felt realistic, the science and the physics behind the actual crash seemed very unrealistic. And then everything that ensues in the second half, as far as realistic, as far as the sharks, the characters, what happens when people attempt to rescue them, and so forth. And I'm definitely going to elaborate more on that in spoilers. Also, the water was quite calm, like I mentioned in my review of Beast of War, unlike an ocean would be. And the last thing I'll put in the mix is, it seems like because this was quite a large cast, there was 3 categories or 3 groups of people that once the crash happens seemed to be stranded in different areas. The captain, a young girl, and a stewardess are on the front end of the plane. A giant chunk of randoms and a few of the stars are in a middle part of the plane that's kind of half submerged, half not submerged, kind of tilting on a coral reef. And it seems to be significantly far away from the other half of the plane. And then there's the final group of characters, which they're in the tail end of the plane, which seems to be completely submerged. And that group of people, which was fairly minimal, like 4 of them, there was a lady that I referred to as the unsinkable Molly Brown, and I'll get into her in spoilers. One of the little kids in this movie, there's 2 little kids, one's with the captain and one's in this end, and then a young boy and another stewardess. So, and they were kind of the whole No Way Up crew, and I'll elaborate on that as well. And the reason I'm mixed on it is just that it's just a lot going on. There's a lot to try and keep up with 3 different stories going on throughout the tail end of the movie.
We're sinking and nothing's going to keep us from drowning.
Keep moving.
It's right, Mrs. Rogo. There are air pockets all over this ship.
Air pockets.
Yes. Just because that deck flooded doesn't mean this one will.
No. How long will we stay afloat?
Long enough.
The Andrea Doria stayed afloat 10 hours before she sank.
You see, Nadia, everything is going to be all right. We got a long time to go. Come on. Keep moving.
This dock leads to a vertical air shaft.
Through that little hole?
This little hole, as you call it, is going to get us out of here and up to Broadway. We've climbed 4 decks so far. We've got 2 more to go. This is the only way out.
But you expect a person to fit through there?
Mrs. Rosen, you're going to crawl right through there. Believe me.
She has this illusion, always thinking she's too fat.
Mr. Rogo, you follow me.
Yeah, I figured. It's me again, huh? Why?
Because when we get to the other end of this duct, it's going to take both of us to help the others out. Mr. Martin!
Yes, sir?
You follow up the rear. Make sure everybody's accounted for.
Oh, okay, Reverend.
I'm going next. So if old fat ass gets stuck in there, I will be caught behind her.
And this will lead me to the negatives on this one. And the biggest negative for me was probably just the stupid characters' decisions that were made. And I can be somewhat forgiving on this one because, you know, whenever we as horror movie fans or moviegoers watch movies, we're watching from the outside in, and we're like, oh my God, how stupid did they do? Why? I would have never done that. But at the end of the day, I think if we were all in those crazy extreme situations, that we might be tempted or just distracted into making dumb decisions and impulse and fear, and not accounting the, you know, stupid decisions, I guess, just tend to be part of characters in horror movies. So I guess we could get used to it because it's been a very common thing this year. And here, just a few of the decisions just where it just seems so extreme that I was like, what? And there's just a few characters that were a little bit on the nose. I felt like the whole bunch overall was decent and campy, but there's just a few of them, mainly the villainous ones, which were over the top. And you're just waiting for them to die. So when they die, that part's positive, but the character themselves are highly annoying. And I think primarily of Angus from Insidious, he was the most obnoxious that I've seen in years as far as characters that just are pinpointed as the pain in the neck in the group in a catastrophe. And I guess the last thing I'll put in negatives is I'll break it down this way. The movie overall starts off strong, and then tends to end weak. So it's weaker in the ending. Not that I hated the ending, it just, this movie is definitely broken into two shifts. The front end, which seems to be more intense, more mystery, intrigue, and horror. And then the second half, which is less intense, somewhat, but just because of the campiness and the stupidityness of some of the characters, and just the randomness of certain things that occur. One primarily involving a helicopter. That will be the Jaws 2 reference, which will break down that in spoilers as well. So with no further ado, I'm just going to get into spoilers. I am recommending this movie. If it's in the theaters, go ahead. If you love shark movies, then if you love shark movies or plane crash movies, you're pretty much going to be having a good time with this. So go out there and see it. Don't let the Strangers trilogy be a reason why you don't want to follow Renny Harlin anymore. This is definitely a big step up from that. So you've been warned. Spoilers. So this movie opens up in a karaoke lounge, and I'm thinking, what a weird place to start a shark plane crash movie. But it opens up in a karaoke lounge, and one of our pilots is there gallivanting around in, I guess, Los Angeles, with young women, and it is Ben Kingsley's character. And he's singing karaoke terribly, by the way. And he sings the song "Fly Me to the Moon," which I love that song, and I thought was a neat little addition to this movie, but he was terrible at it. Flash forward to what Aaron Eckhart's character is doing prior to boarding this plane, which is just briefly communicating with his family at home. And it's to be noted that he has a very sick son at home, and he's definitely dealing with guilt of not being there. But this is his job, and his job maintains that he works away from home for days at a time, as that's what pilots do. Then we flash forward to the airport, where we get the introduction of all the other generic, the rest of the characters that, there's, to be noted, like I said, it was in groups. So there's like this sports team of people that are from China going back home, and it was a lot of them. It was like probably a soccer team. I don't know. It never really elaborates what the sport is. There's a bunch of them. Then we have a family, a blended family, where you have a newlywed mom and dad with each of them bringing a child, a daughter and a son, to their family, and they're not kind of getting along. So they're kind of like a little mini Brady Bunch there. And the kids are likable, the parents not so much.
You're now free to move about the cabin.
Where's Mom and Dad? You're back there. Dad?
Way out of your league.
Oh, wait, what if I've got a great personality?
You don't.
And then we have another older lady. So I was calling her the unsinkable Molly Brown, because she kind of gave me the Molly Brown vibe with her snappiness and the way Kathy Bates played that in 97 Titanic. She wasn't near as good as that, but it was just the echoes of that type of character, and similar fates as far as being in a catastrophe and dealing with that. And she was very snappy on the plane as well. Like, there was a very odd scene where she insults one of the passenger next to her, saying that he's a 5 and the stewardess that he's hitting on is a 9, and he doesn't have a chance. So that was the type of character she was. And then we had another middle-aged couple, and I'll kind of elaborate on them. They seemed like they were part of the main characters, but there wasn't much development on them. And then there was, Angus Sampson's character. He's the worst one. He is smoking, and right out the gate, there's this whole focus on his suitcase, and right away you know that he is going to be the cause of the plane crash, and it's something in his suitcase which is going to cause the plane to crash, which that is definitely the case. He has some sort of faulty wiring going on there, and it gets missed during the like scanning and all that when they are checking luggage, because one of the airport people are on their phone and miss it. And then the people loading it miss it as well, and it ends up catching fire in halfway through the flight, which then erupts to a giant fire and another explosion and the plane eventually going down. But there's some serious time on this plane where they're kind of trying to show us all the characters and all their dynamics, and since it's such a big crew of people, it takes a while for us to get to that suitcase setting on fire and eventually causing the plane to go down. Things that happen are like the sports teams are kind of bickering amongst each other. The parents of the two young kids decide to go to the bathroom to get it on. It's also to be noted that the little girl is extremely sassy, and she has an interaction with the pilot in the lobby or in the airport before they leave, which was definitely so much that was going on in these parts was telling me how it was going to play out later on. Like, him and her were definitely going to be stuck together at a good point of the tail end of the movie, and that's exactly what happens. So the plane crash then starts to ensue with the suitcase setting on fire, explosions happening, and we get a very final destination-ist and an even more extended of a plane crash happening, where we're getting what's going on with the pilots and how they're dealing with the cargo fire, how they're trying to stop it, how they're trying to radio back that there's a problem, and then how a lot of the catastrophe is already unraveling in the main part of the plane, where because some part of the explosion, there was a hole that was put into the plane, so it's already the masts come down and everyone's panicking and everything. And I found it funny, like, that there was lots of random debris flying really fast throughout this plane, stuff that wasn't tied down or locked in, and just totally like knocking people's eyes out, or heads are getting bashed. So people are dying before the plane even hits. So that was kind of new and a neat little thing, and kind of added to the graphic and horror of it, because the people that are next to the people that this is happening to, it's just, like I said, the actual crash was very emotionally and terrifying. That I feel like the group of actors and their faces and their reactions, I think, did a really good job with this plane crash. And then it eventually goes down all the way. It hits a coral reef and everything, and it's brutal, and it doesn't make any sense really as far as the physics, but at this point the crash itself was so good that you didn't really care. And next thing, and it was nighttime when the plane went down. But by the time they're kind of all waking up, it's sunny. It's daytime. So flash forward to the plane being in 3 sections, like I'd said in the non-spoiler part. So we have the front, where we have Aaron Eckhart, the little girl, the one stewardess is there, and the whole plot point that's going on here is there's some sort of beacon. I guess it wasn't a black box, but it was something, some sort of thing that he needed to know for sure if it was on, that would send back their location. He wasn't sure if it was on. I guess maybe before it crashed, it was showing it was off and on his little like dials. So they come up with this plan that she's going to go get it, and she's going to swim, even though they have boats, which was one of the big dumb decisions right out the gate. And of course, as soon as she goes into the water, then we start to realize that there are sharks. Now, it took a minute for the sharks to come, but they do come. And this is where I started getting the Jaws 2 vibe, because in Jaws 2, you have a bunch of teenagers stranded on sailboats, and it kind of plays out very similar here for the rest, until they're rescued, because they're stranded, and it's kind of a group of them, and there's bickering, and then the sharks are coming and eating people here and there and stuff like that. So you see sharks eating people who are already dead, but then you see them starting to target people who are alive and trying to swim around. And this is also was giving me that Indianapolis meets Titanic vibe. And the reason I felt like there was a Titanic vibe was because of the lifeboat. They had lifeboats, but they were really more like life rafts. And then the character of Becky, who I was calling Unsinkable Molly Brown, because she was stuck in the other end of the plane, the submerged end of the plane, and they were having a whole no way up thing. And those of you who saw my top 10 worst shark movies of all time know that No Way Up is on that list. And this is not going to be on either list, just so you guys know. It would not make my top 10 best shark movies, nor is it going to make my top 10 worst shark movies, because I felt like it did it better than No Way Up. Now, the four of them in there are trying to get their way out, and I think the big issue there was they waited too long to leave. And the boy gets out, the stewardess gets out, the little boy that's with them gets out, but poor Becky, poor unsinkable Molly Brown, sinks because she can't get out. She's just, I guess with her age and with her size, she just wasn't going to be able to swim all the way down and come all the way up and make it without drowning. So she just waits out the water coming all the way up. And there's this kind of this brutal scene where she's looking at her phone, and everyone's phone works in the water in this movie, by the way. Another suspension of disbelief, where she's pulling up a picture of her granddaughter and having this emotional moment, and that's the end of her. But I liked the character because she was kind of sassy. She did have a heart for the little boy, and even though she was kind of roasting the young man, she liked him too.
If we go back, they'll swamp the boat. They'll pull us right down, I'm telling you.
Knock it off. You're scaring me. Come on, girls. Grab an oar. Let's go.
Are you out of your mind? We're in the middle of the North Atlantic. Now, do you people want to live or do you want to die?
I don't understand a one of you. What's the matter with you? It's your men out there. There's plenty of room for more.
Meanwhile, in the middle, we have the soccer team of young people, and they're mixed in with a bunch of other randoms, including the jerk character. And they're bickering a lot, deciding on where they should be standing in the plane. They are being attacked by the sharks. And that group just seemed like that group didn't have too much going on to kind of make it feel like the other two groups were more smaller, and when those scenes were going on, there was more of an emotional beat going to it. I also forgot to mention about Ben Kingsley. So when the plane first is in the water, this was another scene that didn't make sense because it felt like the nose of the plane was submerged, but the other end, just on the outside of the door, was completely above the water, and it wasn't like this. It was like the nose was like this, and then that was like that, but when they crossed through, it felt like it was like that, so like, not making sense there. Anyhow, Ben Kingsley, the way the plane crashed, he could not get out. Like, he had something that had his foot strapped in like a handcuff. And they worked on it for a while, and then he pretty much had a Titanic death. It felt like the captain. It was very similar with the way the glass broke, and the water comes in, and he drowns. And he went down with the plane. So, there was that. So the sharks are nipping off random passengers one by one, and I felt like before we get to a few of them, there was a little lackluster there, so there was kind of like a lull. Another thing that was like discombobulated about this whole story is we flash to this Chinese fisherman boat of them getting notification, because eventually they do turn that beacon on and they figure out where they are. Now they got to get to them. So they radio to this fisherman boat, hey, there's been a plane crash and you're the closest boat. Can you please, we're commanding that you go assist. And they do. They start heading there. So we know that this fisherman boat is coming, but meanwhile, one of my weirdest scenes from Jaws 2 is going to unravel back at the plane wreckage, because the characters are now mostly all grouped together, and a helicopter comes. And I'm thinking to myself, why is this helicopter here? We know the Chinese fisherman boat's coming, so why would we even see the Chinese fisherman boat if this helicopter wasn't going to have a bad ending? And I'm thinking sharks and helicopters in movies never get along well. And there was a scene in Deep Blue Sea that was very similar, where there was like a plane coming down and a shark going after someone being evacuated. But this scene played out more like the Jaws 2 scene. But they're trying to lower someone down, and they're all like, don't do it, the sharks will get her, and they can't hear it, and then the shark bites the person lower down into the water, and then subsequently pulls down the whole helicopter, which, again, this could not happen, but it happens in this movie. So this was the biggest, or I would say the dumbest scene in the whole movie, you know, and we've seen it before. They did it. I mean, Jaws 2 did the same exact dumb scene. And when I was a kid, I liked it, but as I grew older, that Jaws 2 scene became a lot dumber. And if I did a shark death ranking or a people death ranking in Jaws, and like that helicopter guy was towards the bottom, just for that reason. So the boat, then not much longer after that, a few, I guess, who knows, a couple hours go by, whatever it is, the Chinese fisherman boat shows up, but struggles getting right up on them because of the coral reef. So there's a whole like finale with them trying to figure out how they're going to do it. Plus the little girl had swum off onto another piece of debris, and the captain was trying to get her back. And there's this, you know, the tension was ratcheting up here, and the fishermen could see that the sharks were in the water and that some people were still swimming. So in this noble thing, which reminded me of the end of Finding Nemo, they decided to release all their fish into the water to set distraction and bait for the sharks, which it then does work. The sharks instantly, it's like squirrel, you know, in the water, know the fish are there and leave the passengers and the people floating in the rafts alone, and flash forward to the end.
Made me this collar. He is a good and smart master, and he made me this collar so that I may talk. Squirrel!
And it kind of skips, once the fish all swim away, it kind of skips to like the dynamic of how they eventually got them on. Because my question was, if they led the sharks towards them, they couldn't get over the coral, these people had to come to them, so they would have had to get closer to the sharks again to get on the boat. But they don't elaborate on how that breaks down. It flash forwards to the next day. They're heading back to the mainland. They're all on the boat. It's a very Titanic-ish ending, and ends with Aaron Eckhart calling home to his family and having a very emotional moment. And the only other character that I will elaborate on was Angus Sampson's character. So like, he was the one that was extremely over the top. I mean, he's smoking throughout the entire movie. He's extremely annoying, extremely just constantly saying dumb things to everyone, and you just waited for him to get eaten. And it took forever. He was the last death, and it reminded me of Dangerous Animals, when I felt like you waited and waited and waited and waited for the shark to get this guy, and the death just wasn't as grand as I wanted it to be. It was brutal, and he got eaten up pretty good, but it wasn't like a Quint death. It was, you know, it was definitely more of this. It was almost the same death that was at the end of Dangerous Animals with the killer in that movie. So,
Ooby dooby motherfucker.
that's it, the end. Mostly a happy ending for those who got off the boat. The teams, the other random couple, the other random white couple, like they had this kiss at the end. I'm like, these people were barely in it. And then the sport kids also had a little romance budding as well, the girl and the boy, and the two little kids too. So I guess Yeah, this is another one of those movies where it's another ending and another ending. So like the little boy was on another boat, like away. Like the people who were in the No Way Up side of the raft, only 2 of them survived, which was the stewardess, the one stewardess who had gotten bitten and gotten on the boat, and then the little boy. And the little girl, once they had reception, turned on her Find My Phone and saw that where he was, and they, you know, a whole little extra for that, but little reunited, like the little Brady bunch kids are, you know, oh, we're brother and sister now, we're happy, but it was sad for them because their parents were eaten. Their parent, I don't know, actually I don't think their parents were eaten. Their parents were killed in the initial crash in the bathroom. They were one of the first to go, in fact. So the end, for real this time. We're gonna get down to business on this one. So this was a lot to unpack. And at the end of the day, I already can see lots of mixed reviews and lots of people hating on it, lots of people liking or seeing the improvement and being mixed on it. And I overall am mixed on it, but this movie is right up my alley. It was a big enough budget, and considering how strong the front end was and how strong the plane crash was, and even the tail end was full of enough shark action for me to really like this one. I really enjoyed it. It's definitely a step up from Thrash, which is on Netflix. And it's definitely a step up for Renny Harlin for The Strangers. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a good burger. So it's still in theaters, so go ahead and check it out. And please like, subscribe, tap that notification bell, and don't forget to stay scared of plane crashes that get swamped by psychotic mako sharks.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars, and let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, baby, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. With song, let me sing forevermore. You are